welcome to the very first edition of Who Is My Neighbor podcast.
Thank you.
I mean, you know where it comes from. It comes from that passage in Luke chapter 10 where the lawyer came and asked Jesus, how do I get eternal life? And Jesus had a word to say about that. Of course, about loving God, but it also said you should love neighbor as yourself. And later, Jesus would go on to talk about who our neighbors were. And many times our neighbors were radically different than anybody else thought at that time, particularly. It even meant many times our neighbor might even be our enemy. And so when it comes to figuring out who is our neighbor, this is the kind of podcast that wants to explore the breadth and the depth of that, because all persons are our neighbor. And some of them may look like us, some of them may not, some of them may agree with us, some of them may not. Some of them may live close to us, some of them may not. But in this case, our very first guest on Who is Our Neighbor, Reverend Katie Meek, she fits into both categories.
That's right.
She lives close to us and across the globe from us. Let me introduce you to her. Katie is a Texan, born and raised in the North Texas area. She was ordained as an elder into the Central Texas Conference of the United Methodist Church and has served for 10 years as a pastor in various appointments. But particularly, you might have known her or might have run across her when she served our church neighbor, First Methodist in Round Rock. She's been in ministry 20 years. Now that lines up with a time for me when I first met Katie, when she was graduating from high school, and I was privileged to serve as the pastor at the church where her family attended, in First Methodist in Frisco. And one of my earliest memories of Katie was she was raising funds for a mission trip. Yeah. Now, I didn't know who she was at all. But Katie, tell us about that whole experience of your youth, or where did that heart come from? Not every child wants to take a mission trip.
Yeah, First Frisco is where I grew up, and we were always, we had pastors and leaders who were always just very missionally focused. So we welcomed people and did mission sorts of things every summer since I was like in the 7th grade. And then my youth director at the time had a dream of going in-state in Texas and then out of state the next year, and then to the borderlands the next year, and then overseas, went to Guatemala, and then finally to Africa. We went to Kenya the year 2000. That was the mission trip I was raising money for.
For Kenya. Well, yeah. I bet, did you ever imagine yourself when you were in Kenya that one day you'd return to live in that great continent?
I think maybe actually it was that Kenya trip that kind of sparked the call, I think, to missionary service. I knew I wanted to serve the church. I've always known that since a young age, but I think probably that was the mission trip that kind of sparked at least the first part of that call. So.
Well, unpack a little bit more of the call, because again, as I said, first of all, not any student at high school desires to go on mission trips, particularly across the globe. And not everyone feels a call to serve the church in the manner you served, your unique way. Tell us about your particular call.
Sure. So, the church was just, how much of this do you want? I can give you my whole testimony or just pieces of it. But, the church was always like a mother to me. I lost my mother when I was very young. And I like to say that I didn't have one mother. I had 100. And so it just always felt really natural to give back to the community that had given so much to me. And then through the process of serving, I just wanted to serve in whatever capacity I could serve. I realized that there's a really big world. The body of Christ is big and diverse and beautiful and many colors. And that always felt like an adventure to me, and exciting, and something that I wanted to learn into about other cultures and other languages and all of that. So my first call to mission service, I think, was kind of along the lines of when I was called to ministry. And then I went to Africa, and then I knew I wanted to get ordained first. I knew that was what I was supposed to do. And then, you know, when you get ordained in the United Methodist Church, you get on the itineration train, you know,
Now, you
and
bet. Rode that train a long time.
that's right. And so I thought, well, maybe it'll be something I do in my retirement. But then I took the bishop's mission trip to Kenya again in 2014. And when I came back, we were leaving Kenya, and I just wept. I didn't want to go. And I didn't want to go back home. There was some kind of pull. And then I went to Panama the next several years with my church. I led teams to Panama with the missionary couple there. And every year it got bigger and bigger. And, you know, it's one of those fires that you can't put out. And so I just said, well, no, now's the time. So.
And that was in 2017.
That's right.
At some point, you decided that it was time for me to offer myself to the global board. Talk about that process and how you might have ended up in Sierra Leone.
Sure. Actually, you know, I speak Spanish, so I really, really expected and wanted to go to Latin America, honestly. And I applied. You have to go through several different. It's almost like the ordination process. You have to go through several different committees and boards and all of that to apply. And you send in your application and they say, thanks, we got your application. You may never hear from us, but if there's an opening, we'll let you know. And it wasn't too long when they reached out to me and said that there was an opening. And I thought, surely it's this one I've heard about in Guatemala. And they said, no, it was East Africa that I got the email and my stomach just went into my throat because I just thought, oh, wow, Africa, we're serious now. We're not kidding around. And then after I interviewed, they called me back and said, how about Sierra Leone? We think it's a better fit for you. And I said, where is Sierra Leone? And they told me that they'd give me the weekend to pray about it. And then I messaged them back. That was a Friday. I messaged them back Monday and said yes. And then 6 months later, I moved to Sierra Leone, sight unseen, never been there.
Wow, what an experience that must have been. So tell us about this new place you called home, Sierra Leone.
Sure. Actually, I have some pictures if it's okay.
Yes, please.
So I'm going to share my screen for those that are on video. I'm going to go ahead and share. You know what? I'm going to stop share and try that again.
Okay.
Sorry. let me get back to where I'm supposed to go.
This is 21st century digital world of quarantine we live in.
That's right.
That's not about perfection at all.
All right, good. All right, we'll try one more time. Let's see. Share screen. Here we go. There you go. Share. Yeah, you know, I think we're all having a crash course in Zoom. All right, so you've already heard a little bit about me. So Sierra Leone is actually in West Africa. There's a map there of it. Population 7.5 million. It's actually like Texas is 10 times the size of Sierra Leone, 9 times maybe. And the capital is Freetown. It's actually a really rich culturally speaking, and has a really rich history because Freetown is a return post for former enslaved people, and the language Creole that we speak is actually a slave language. It's a language that was taken back from the Americas, and now everybody in Sierra Leone speaks it. Yeah, so they have a lot of challenges. Life expectancy is 52, but they also have a lot of beauty. Their beaches are known as some of the most beautiful in the world. And I have some pictures here of just kind of the color and vibrancy.
Thank you. Wow, look at the
Sierra Leone looks like and feels like. Lots of color, lots of beauty.
Here's the beautiful beaches.
Yeah, and then actually, well, let's go back to that. This peak up here is where the school is at that I work at. It's the highest peak in Sierra Leone. And then favorite things about Sierra Leone is its spirit. So there's a video I've got for you of what that sounds like. Let me see.
Oh, wow.
We like dancing. It's one of my favorite things. That last one, I forgot this one. That last one I was going to tell you about, I turned around because even our drivers were dancing outside.
What is there not to love about that expressiveness and the color and the spirit, as you mentioned, of the people? I mean, we've got some catching up to do to learn to move like that in our worship services.
Yeah, it took me about 6 months even to get used to it. And I came home, the first time I came home from Sierra Leone, I was in worship actually at Round Rock, and I thought, why aren't we dancing? It's so much more fun with dancing.
Well, I think I recognize that because you and I talked a little bit ahead of time, being the school of theology where you work at the Bishop Vitter School of Theology. Tell us about the school.
Sure. So the School of Theology was established in 2017, and I am a lecturer there. It's still pretty small, and we established it with the Bishop Venner School of Theology, which we wanted to kind of center who we were as a school on those kind of values of theology and service to God. So I teach lots of different things. In fact, I have yet to teach the same thing twice. I'm looking forward to that. So I just finished a year of Christian history. I teach preaching, Wesleyan history and doctrine, women in ministry, a little bit of English, history of mission, that kind of thing. And so this is kind of what my day-to-day as a lecturer looks like. I have a group of students who are in the bachelor's degree program, and that's a 4-year university program. And they're training to be pastors. And then we have a group of students who we're training as chaplains. It's a chaplaincy certificacy. And we're trying to get a chaplain, a United Methodist chaplain, in every single one of our United Methodist elementary, middle, and high schools across the country of Sierra Leone. Wow. So yeah, we have quite a few kind of big dreams. And you'll notice most of the pictures are of men. That doesn't really show how much women are really valued in Sierra Leone. But we do have this latest group of theology students. We have actually 3 women who've joined us. So we're really excited about that.
I know the United Methodist have had a presence in Sierra Leone for a number of years. And so you talk about trying to get them at every school. How many schools are there?
Almost 400.
Oh, wow.
One of the things I teach in my Wesleyan theology class, it's very evident in Sierra Leone, is that as Wesleyans, we believe in education. And we believe in the transforming power of education. So we're the largest Protestant denomination, and I think have the largest number of schools.
Wow, that's cool. That's nice to know our presence there. The work doesn't come without challenges. I know that. No. I know there's a lot of exciting things, but what are some of the challenges?
Yeah, so there's 3 that I tend to talk about. There's a lot. Poverty is a big deal, but there's really 3 main ones that we try and fight at the school. And the first one is disempowerment. So one thing that I've learned a lot about is what the effects of colonization. The negative effects of colonization, and disempowerment is one of the main of those effects. So essentially what happens is there's a culture that comes in, colonizers come in and believing that their culture is advanced to the one that they're colonizing. And then that mindset starts to permeate the people there. So then they start to think, well, we don't have what it takes to make our own decisions, to make the world better for ourselves, almost even to lead ourselves. It's almost like they don't trust themselves.
Oh.
Yeah, it's really challenging. And I early on saw it as kind of a confidence issue, like a crisis of confidence.
Uh-huh.
I've watched people like make really big plans and then just like sabotage them before they have a chance to bear fruit. And I think it's just because they don't necessarily trust their own wisdom, which
Yeah.
which is deep and significant, but it's
Yeah.
like they don't trust it. They've been trained not to.
Very embedded in part of the culture. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the first one, disempowerment. The second one is corruption, which is also an effect of colonization. So Sierra Leone became an independent country in 1961. And what they inherited was a system of government that didn't take into account the cultural realities on the ground or that historic wisdom. And that created essentially the circumstances, the environment for corruption to unfold.
Yeah.
And you see that even in the schools, people give out grades for pay, like
Really?
elementary all the way to university.
Oh,
Yeah, it's really challenging. But some part of that is because the teachers, a lot of them make $50 a month if they get paid. There's some teachers who do not get paid at all.
I can't imagine to see that up close, knowing
Yeah,
your particularly your own belief in the transformative power of education.
right.
And to see it compromised like that must cause your own heart to break.
Yeah, and I think, and I've seen other Sierra Leone teachers, especially, who are seeing this happen in front of our faces, and it's just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
So, like the United Methodist Women in Sierra Leone are really stepping up. Along, a lot of them are teachers and trying to combat that as well. So that's the second one is corruption, and then our third challenging one is the blood diamond conflict. And there was a generation of people whose education was essentially disrupted because of the blood diamond conflict.
Mm.
So to give you an example, so what happened was, they call it a civil war. It was really more like armed bandits. The corruption had gotten to such a degree that armed bandits were just free to go and take over the diamond mines, and then they started terrorizing the country. So they burned down villages, they forced children to kill their own parents, and then they recruited those children into their army. I mean, just unspeakable things. And then they moved their way into Freetown. This was for a decade or more. So it first started way out and then came into Freetown. So I have a friend in Freetown, and he told me that he was in high school when the rebel army came into Freetown, and they hid in their house for a year.
Oh my.
Mm-hmm. So he lost a year of school. And the kids who were way out in the provinces, that happened for like a decade.
Help some of us who may not be aware of that history. Would you place that in what years we're talking about?
Sure. So it's like 1990, 89, 90, 91, and it was Liberia and Sierra Leone. There were a couple of, they were just crazy madmen armed bandits who terrorized the country. And then, there are a lot of reasons that was able to go on as long as it did, but it was like 12 years, 12, 13, 14 years. It's just awful.
In the current generation, it has, like you already noted, has a memory of that, and is impacted by that. Wow.
Yeah. And the thing about Sierra Leoneans is they don't want to be known for that, and they often are, but they are still dealing with it. So, like, for example, the education situation. This year, 2019, they have a test that's sort of like an SAT in order to get into school. 95% of graduating seniors failed that test.
Oh my.
Yeah, so it's kind of generational, right? So what started then, we're seeing more and more the effects of, because a generation was kind of lost to little or no education, or disrupted education.
And what we know about the long history, it takes multiple generations to turn that kind of thing around.
Right.
But you're in the middle of meeting these challenges. So what are some of the ways that transformation is happening?
Yeah, thanks for asking, because that's the thing that I'm excited about is I have the really wonderful privilege of being one of the first faculty members at the School of Theology for the United Methodist University. So Bishop John K. Yambasu, who you've probably heard his name, and we can talk about him a little bit later. He's a really wonderful man. He used to be a missionary, and he saw these problems as well and had the dream. God gave him the dream of starting a university in Sierra Leone. And the dream was that that university would be founded on 3 values. The first of which would be service. The second is integrity. And the third is excellence. So service, integrity, excellence. So we meet disempowerment with a call to serve. And helping people to to know themselves called to make a difference and to change their world, and also to lead their community to do the same. We meet corruption with integrity. And so I like to say it's really important what I teach my students, but what's more important than the content of what I teach them is that I show up and model integrity. And that's true of every faculty member at the school as well. And so we work hard. I show up on time, and I make sure that I have worked hard and they can see that work. And that I respect them enough to do that. Right. So I'm not working on somebody else's stuff. I'm doing my own stuff, and I'm doing it well. And then we meet kind of disrupted education with excellence, and we demand that from our students, and we demand it of ourselves.
What a great way to meet those challenges with those 3 key words. Disempowerment with service. They're worth repeating. Disempowerment with service, corruption with integrity, and then disruption, I think is maybe the word you're using, with excellence. Wow, that's a great model. And tell me how it's working.
It's working pretty well. And actually, I have some pictures of a couple of students that I want to tell you about, if that's all right.
Please.
All right, here we go. I'm going to share this again. Okay, so there's the 3 words: excellence, integrity, service. I should switch them around. But this is Tamba Kainbanja. He's one of my students. And behind closed doors, they like to call him the professor. Actually, I say that. In class, they call him the professor, the philosopher, too. He's a really deep thinker. And he is from the Kono tribe. And I remember maybe it was like a year and a half ago, we did a special program. We do special programs at the end of every semester, in which we talked about how the body of Christ is global. And so Christ speaks every language, is every color, lives in every place, and truly incarnates through the body of Christ into every language and place and culture and people. And after we kind of gave that, it was contextual theology and incarnation presentation. Sure. He stood up and he said, honestly, I always kind of thought that my people didn't have that much to offer, that it was for other people. But he said, but I really feel now, I feel called to go home and encourage my people to worship in Kono and sing and write songs in Kono and do what we do in Kono, because what we have is blessed of God, a gift of God, right? And, it breaks my heart that this is a man who's, I think, a little bit older than me, and he's lived that long with that kind of disempowerment mindset. But at the same time, the fact that we as a school are intervening into that and speaking a new story, I think is really important and exciting. And I think it's transforming. By the way, Tamba is planning on going on and getting another degree after this. So he's a leader in his community, has been a long time. And I think part of it is because he likes it, and he's started to see that he's capable. Maybe more capable than he thought he was, but I think partly because he wants to lead, right?
Yeah. Any man who can make the jump from incarnational contextual theology to empowerment is a pretty brilliant fella. Wow.
I think you're right about that. Sweet Tamba. He's one of my, you're not supposed to have favorites. I like, really all of them are my favorites, but he's a good man. And then the second student that I want to tell you about is Reverend Stephen Sinesy. I like to call him the bishop behind closed doors because he's just brilliant. And he's a great leader. And I think maybe he will be bishop someday. But so he is my age, and he took his exit exams during the war. And during the war, while he was taking his exit exams, the rebel army came onto the compound where they were taking their exams, and they actually had to get on the floor and finish their exams. Mm-hmm. So I'll give you one guess how well he did on that exam. He did not do well at all. And so it took him 14, 15 years and some outside help, actually, to be able to go back and retake his exam. But he was recruited to be in the first class at the school. And about 2 years in, he said, when you first brought us here, it felt like you were giving us this heavy equipment that we didn't know how to do. He compared it to a car, like a brand new car with all these bells and whistles. We didn't know why we needed it, how to use it, any of that. He said, but I'm starting to realize that you're teaching us how to drive this car, and you're showing us. So that gives you an idea, I think, of the impact that we're making to our students. It's in Sierra Leone, we say small, a little bit, little by little, we get there. But I think little by little, class by class, they are being transformed.
We've already got the next professor, the next bishop there lined up.
That's jokingly. Right.
That's really great. Well, I do want to just go back to something you said a minute ago, back to your bishop in Sierra Leone. He has been a global leader in our United Methodist movement in these last 18 months or so. Bishop John Yambasu, tell us about your experience working alongside this wonderful man.
I actually asked my Texas bishop, Lowry, before I moved there, what he thought of him. And he said, everybody knows him to be a man of integrity, and everybody knows him to be a man who of great humor. And those are the two things that I would say about him as well. He's a lot of fun to work with, and he's the kind of person who will look big challenges in the face and say, our God is bigger. Mm-hmm. And that's what I have seen him do with this global conflict that we have in the United Methodist Church as well. I mean, I think it was in conversation with other people, but I think he really did feel like God was calling him to do something, to step in. And what I know about Sierra Leoneans and about this particular bishop is I think it makes sense that it would have been a Sierra Leonean to step up. And that is because Sierra Leone is known as one of the most religiously tolerant countries in the world. We live side by side with Muslims and work closely with the Islamic community as well. And they have had to learn how to live together, to work together, to love together, to serve together. And I have seen him walk in and lead through compromises that I, as an American, I think probably wasn't even prepared to do, but to watch him lead through them and make hard decisions and keep his integrity in the midst of that in Sierra Leone. I just, I felt really hopeful when he told me, and we prayed over him. Actually, me and my dad, of all people, when he came to visit, we visited the bishop, and it was right at the beginning of some of these conversations and his work in the States to try and come to a compromise globally for the United Methodist Church. We prayed over him, but I felt hopeful for the first time in a long time. I felt kind of hopeful that we might be able to, with his leadership and his gifts and his integrity, we might be able to make some progress. And it's been really beautiful to see that that's coming. I hope we'll see. I know. But it seems to me that we have a path. I hope. And we'll see what the Lord does with all of that and what we end up doing together. But I'm really proud to serve under that kind of leader. And I'm really proud that, I'm going to try and say this. I'm really proud that he's not the kind of man that believes the disempowerment message, because if he were, he wouldn't have stepped forward.
Yeah.
But because he believes that God calls him in the same way that God calls all people, he stepped forward.
Uh,
So
I think not only will he go down in our particular religious historical annals, but heaven has to be smiling to have that kind of leader step up for this kind of time as we move forward with the protocol in the months to come. So I
yeah.
thank you for sharing your personal firsthand experience with your bishop. Katie, you can't do this work without some help, and
Oh
that
yeah.
includes all kinds of help. But while there's various ways we can help you, one of them I know is essentially you need to raise some funds to
Mm.
keep the work going there. Talk to us about your needs and how we can help.
So you can help me in two ways. You can either, or both, support me as a missionary. And what's great when you support me as a missionary, I have an advance number, and you can give to that advance. When you support me as a missionary, that actually goes beyond me. It goes to all the global missionaries. But then I have a covenant relationship with you and that sort of thing. So you can do that. You can also support the university, the United Methodist University. And I have some information on how, like, you can go to my website and find all of that information. So actually do you want me to share my screen now?
Please do, yes.
Okay. Let me share this information there. Let's see. I'm going to try.
It's coming. Remember, here it comes.
There you go. Okay, so as a global missionary, there's my advance number. And then I have a website, postmodernmissionary.com, where you can read more about what I do. And then also you can find the links to how and where to give.
And I just tell the folks to remind them, because I'm going to encourage the people of PFUMC to join Terry and I in this support of the work. If you don't memorize that advance number, though, we're leaving it up there a little while for you to get it. Trust me, we know how to look that number up if you remember Katie's Meek's name. And I really do encourage you to go to the website, friends, to postmodernmissionary.com, or follow her on Facebook as well, and get a chance, because she's going to be returning back pretty soon.
Yeah.
I know we're in the middle of this pandemic. Tell us about going back.
Well, we just heard news yesterday. The president of Sierra Leone said pretty soon they're going to be opening the airports again for commercial flights. So there was some question about that. I came home partly because of the pandemic and partly because I wanted to be able to, I had scheduled to be able to itinerate like this and talk to churches and tell my story and tell the story of Sierra Leone. So I was really hoping I'd be able to go back. So I think it's looking like, knock on wood, the Lord willing, I'll be able to go back in August. And we'll hopefully start another year of school. The students that I started with almost 3 years ago now are seniors this year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You want to be there for that. They want to be with you. I know that for sure.
Yeah.
There's no doubt. Well, again, folks, I really do encourage you to support whatever level you can. It's wonderful to be a part of the greater work of the global church, and you can now tell good work going on in Sierra Leone. I want to just kind of close with a cautionary word from as we kind of bring it to the end today, from Anne Lamont in her book Bird by Bird. Some instructions on writing. She says, you can safely assume that you created God in your own image if God hates the same people you hate. That quote stays with me, but I never let it stay with me that long, because I want to turn that around. You can safely assume that you're living into the image that God has created with you when you love all the people that God loves. And Katie, I want to thank you for reminding us of the work of Sierra Leone, and you've reminded us they are our neighbors too, and they feel closer to me, and I know they feel closer to those who are tuned in today to this podcast, and we'll be praying for you as you make your travels back, and we'll be paying attention and supporting you in the weeks, months, and years to come. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you for having me. I really have enjoyed being with you, and I've heard your story as a church for a couple of years through your pastor, and I just pray that God continues to bless you, and with health and wellness and growth, and in all capacities. So thank you. God bless you.
Thank you, Katie. God bless you. Take care now.